Now, maybe some Giants fans were of the belief that 2014 was going to be a bit of a rebound season. Maybe it's got some excitement going once they saw how active the New York Giants were in free agency last offseason, which is something that was definitely out of character for that organization. However, I think most people saw that this still wasn't going to be a particularly good Giants team. You had a new offensive coordinator, so that means a veteran quarterback like Eli Manning is going to have to learn a whole new system. There were holes all over the place on this team, and you're just looking at them, and to me, they always had the look of a team that will finish somewhere around 6-10, which is exactly what they did in 2014. In many ways, the Giants were who I thought they were in 2014. The funny thing is, though, about the Giants is even though they finished 6-10 and they had another really mediocre season, I think Giants fans are a little more optimistic now about 2015 than you might envision for a team that's had back-to-back lame-ass seasons. And that's maybe primarily because of their 2014 first-round pick, Odell Beckham Jr. Let's call it as we see it. You know, this is a team that wasn't very good, but man, once Odell Beckham Jr. was unleashed, man, he took the freaking league by storm as a wide receiver like I haven't seen since Randy Moss back in 1998. That's special. Again, I don't throw around those type of compliments that often because Randy Moss in 1998, for those old enough to remember, they remember Randy Moss's rookie season. They remember the Thanksgiving game in Dallas where he sat there and had 3 catches all over 50 yards, all touchdowns, and he just dominated. I mean, Moss was sick. And Odell Beckham Jr., the greatest compliment I could pay him about his 2014 rookie season, he was sick. This dude was sick. And no question about it, the highlight of highlights of the New York Giants, and their draft history over the past 5 years. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. is that type of special hit that every organization would love to have from time to time. And think about it, he was the 12th overall pick, and there were some people that were kind of questioning why they would have drafted a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. 12th overall. Well, those people are stupid, as they were proven to find out. Now, in terms of other hits in the draft in recent years, maybe you go all the way back to 2010 and first-round pick Jason Pierre-Paul. Looking at their second-round pick from a couple of years ago in Jonathan Hankins, who I thought played really well in 2014. But for an organization that's won 2 Super Bowls, for an organization that gets a lot of credit in terms of how they run their front office, their draft history hasn't been the best. I mean, they missed really badly with their 2012 first-round pick, David Wilson. Again, as I emphasized before, don't ever take a Frank Beamer Virginia Tech running back high. You will end up getting burned. You can say it's for injuries or this or that, but the bottom line is they got burned, and they got burned badly. And now their first-round pick, you know, the type of guy that you'd expect to be a franchise type of player, or at least a key contributor or star for your team 3 years later, is now out of the National Football League. You know, there's just been a lot of, I won't say misses, but just a lot of lack of real impact out of the draft. You know, you still have questions, I think, about their 2013 first-round pick, Justin Pugh. You know, with his short arms, is he still best suited playing right tackle? Is he a guy that you need to kick inside long-term to guard? Would you be wasting his feet inside at guard? I mean, there's a lot of questions. When you look at the Giants and their draft history, I guess the best way I could put it is a couple of hits, a couple of misses, and just a kind of a lot of I mean, not a lot really stands out to you where you can sit there and crap on them or knock on them, but just not enough. Just not enough. Now, for the New York Giants this offseason, I wasn't expecting them to be anywhere near as active as they were last offseason, and that was, you know, a good thing because you start spending that much money in free agency, and it's just showing how much you've missed in the draft, and furthermore, that means you're trying to overcompensate, you're getting your roster older and in a hurry. And they weren't that active. I mean, they did spend some money, and actually I have more questions about the money that they spent this year in some cases because it seemed like they were giving out a little too much money to guys that clearly didn't earn it. I mean, for God's sakes, who did they sign? Like J.T. Thomas? I mean, the Bears once come for crying out loud. Just think about that for a second. They gave guaranteed money to a guy like J.T. Thomas. I don't get it. They weren't incredibly active. It was more so they were giving fourth-tier guys third-tier money and just kind of left you scratching your head a little bit. Now, you get to this 2015 NFL draft. This could possibly be Tom Coughlin's last season in the fold. You've got an aging franchise quarterback in Eli Manning, and you've got a very narrow window to potentially contend. The Giants aren't really in a good situation. I know there might be more optimism heading into 2015 because, again, of somebody like an Odell Beckham Jr. and what he did in 2014. But that one player alone doesn't, whitewash everything when it comes to an organization. This team does have a lot of needs in a lot of different areas on both sides of the ball. When I look at this team defensively, this is a team that needs help on all three levels of their defense. Over the past couple of years, they've gotten rid of guys like Umenyiora and Tuck and Kiwanuka and all of these guys that were a big part of that Giants defensive identity for years. This team that could sit there and line up 4 defensive ends, 4 pass rushers in pass rushing situations and could be a real force to deal with. Well, now you're down to Jason Pierre-Paul, who struggles to stay healthy from time to time and can be frustrating to watch because he's such a physically gifted athlete, but at times his production doesn't match the athleticism. And there's just not a lot around him in terms of other pass rushers. That's a huge need for this Giants team, a team whose identity has been just that, their ability to match up and line up and get after the quarterback with just 4 or maybe 5. They desperately need help at the edge rush position. They desperately, badly need it. They also need help at linebacker. I know Giants fans have been beating this drum for years, and frankly, I don't understand why this organization doesn't place more value on their linebackers and linebacker play in general. You would think you could use another edge rusher at the outside linebacker position on the strong side. They definitely could still use an upgrade at middle linebacker. I don't care how much you love John Beeson, and they could definitely use a more athletic player at the weak side position. They need help all over the place in that linebacking core, in my opinion, and have for years, and have criminally neglected it, similar to what the Eagles did for so many years for reasons that are still unbeknownst to me. And then when you look at this Giants defense, I think they definitely need to address that safety position. Now you lost Antrell Roll via free agency. He went to Chicago. You need somebody there at the back end of that defense, especially because you're not generating a ton of pass rush and you don't have the greatest of athletes at the linebacker position. It's a team that for so many years their identity was on the defensive side of the ball, and I look at their defense now, and frankly, they really don't have much of an identity. Now, in terms of the offensive side of the ball, it's about Eli Manning. He's still a franchise player. He's still the guy you got to help, and that means you got to protect him. That means they need to upgrade that offensive line in front of him, and I still think wide receiver is a position that needs to be addressed. Yes, you drafted Odell Beckham Jr. in the first round last year, and he's a stud. But you've got Ruben Randall entering a contract year this year. Victor Cruz coming off of a torn patella tendon, which is not the easiest injury for a skill player like him, whose game is primarily built off of speed and quickness to come back from. You need to give Eli more options. And, after 2015, the only option there might very well be Odell Beckham Jr. So he needs help there, and they definitely need that big physical type of red zone target. That is one thing they are seriously, seriously lacking in New York. Now, in terms of their draft philosophy, as it's been for so many years, I think the Giants are looking just best player available. And when I look at it for the Giants, that's the way they need to go. They just need to go either side of the ball, best player available, regardless of position. There's not going to be a quarterback there at number 9, you wouldn't think, so that takes that debate potentially out of the equation. But so many other options are open. When I look at the Giants and what they could do with that 9th overall pick, I'll give you an example. If Amari Cooper's there, the Giants must jump on it. They must pounce on it. Yes, he's not that red zone type of guy like maybe a Kevin White could develop into, but Amari Cooper is just a really, really good football player and will be a really, really good NFL wide receiver. And you want to help out Eli Manning and you want to add some additional punch to that offense. Imagine how much more difficult it's going to be for teams to double up on Odell Beckham Jr. if he's got Amari Cooper on the other side. Or imagine if you lined up Amari Cooper and Odell Beckham Jr. on the same side and you put one of them in the slot. Holy shit. When I look at that 9th overall pick, that's an area they could definitely go. I wouldn't be surprised to see them address the right tackle position someday, hoping that guy will take over the left tackle from Will Beatty. That way maybe they can flip Justin Pugh inside to guard, which I think is what they want to do long-term as an organization. I'm not sure that there's an offensive lineman worth taking number 9 overall, but if you're going to see that first offensive lineman come off the board, it very well could be with this 9th overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. Now, there's also that option that they could sit there and go again on the defensive side of the ball. I think a lot of people assume that first pick is going to be defense and it's going to be some type of edge rusher. And again, somebody could say that and it would make a lot of sense to me because they badly need it. I don't know how they couldn't come out of this draft in the first 2 rounds without some type of edge rusher because they need one really badly. For what their defensive identity has been for so many years, for them to not address it at all, I think would be a big time miss and fail for this Giants organization. But again, they don't have to address it necessarily in round 1, even though I wouldn't be surprised if they did address it in round number 1. They need to understand that their best player available philosophy that they've used for so many years is the way to go again. Although you could argue, based off of the Giants' draft history, it hasn't worked that particularly well. 2 back-to-back really crappy seasons. 6-10 in 2014. You took best player available in Odell Beckham Jr., but where were the rest of the contributions really, frankly, from that draft class? And where have the contributions been from draft classes over the previous few years? But again, if the Giants come out of this draft with Amari Cooper, I'm most certainly not going to knock them. If they took an edge rusher like somebody like a Shane Ray or a Bud Dupree, I'm most certainly not going to knock them. If they took an offensive tackle like an Eric Flowers, I'm not going to knock them. Brandon Scherff, different story. I guess we'll ultimately see. Like I said, again, I think the Giants fans are a little bit more optimistic about 2015, and that's primarily just because of Odell Beckham Jr., if I'm being so honest. I don't think there's as much reason for optimism and hope as people think that there is.